There's been a lot of rumors and speculation that the New York Jets will make an aggressive pursuit of the Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams. Those pursuits, rumors, and everything just took a massive hit with some new news. We'll discuss. Let's roll. Boy Green Daily starts now.
Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rodgers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a happy Saturday edition of Boy Green Daily. My name is Paul Eston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. This is a daily New York Jets video program, also available wherever you find your podcasts. Feel free to hit that up as well. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're streaming every Saturday, starting last week. We've done some hop-on-pop action where my father, with the same name, slap a senior on the end of that, joins on the program to share his wisdom and insights on all things Jets and some other action as well. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Good morning, Father Paul Esden, a.k.a. the Esden Zone.
Good morning, Boy Green. How are you doing this morning?
Excellent. Well, actually, that's a lie. Not as excellent because, there's been some hot and heavy connections from some legitimate, sources from the Jets building that they will make an aggressive pursuit for Devante Adams, the former teammate of Aaron Rodgers with the Green Bay Packers. But the new news to discuss and get your thoughts on here to start the show is that yesterday it became official. Antonio Pierce, who was promoted to the interim head coach in the middle of last year after Josh McDaniels was fired, he's got the permanent gig. They slapped crossed off the interim tag on him as a head coach, and that seemingly has taken a hit to any future Jets-Raiders potential trade for Davante Adams, because here's two quotes I want to read that Davante said about Antonio Pierce. This one's from ESPN. Davante Adams said, quote, his vote was for Pierce to be the head coach, and he said, quote, he'd run through a wall for that man. Additionally, this one's from Adam Schefter. This was Davante Adams on Antonio Pierce previously. Quote, he embodies what it means to be a Raider, and that mentality, that swag, and all the things he endorses is the things that I believe in, end quote. I don't think it's dead. I don't think it's 100% over because they have a lot of important decisions they have to make for their present and future of the cap. But I'm not going to lie, it probably takes a hit because for the Jets to get Davante Adams, a big piece of the puzzle was doing similar to what Aaron Rodgers did, where he kind of came out and said he intends to play for the Jets, and then the two teams had to figure it out. If Davante would have got a coach that he didn't want, it seems more likely he could have done something of that magnitude, which could have got the wheels greased for a potential move here. So chances kind of decrease a little bit. I'm curious an outside perspective on all things Jets land, what you make of this pursuit in general and Davante Adams.
Yeah, so I'll start with the easiest one first, which is my opinion of Davante Adams.
Okay.
And he clearly is one of the top receivers in the league. Having even a mediocre person throw him the ball, one of the top receivers in the league. I think he's fallen off a little bit, but that it's hard to say. Is that because of the quarterbacks he's had? Is that because he's getting a little older? Hard to say. But clearly top 10, top 15 receiver in the league without running through the list in my head, but clearly value add. The problem is, so that's the first thing.
Okay.
I'll go straight to the meat.
Okay. Sure.
Why my thoughts on the Jets pursuing Davante Adams. The Jets are like a rowboat right now.
Okay.
That they are bailing because it has a bunch of holes. And I don't, I'm a secondary Jets fan, but I still want them to be successful. They do not need another receiver with the number of holes in the boat. If they had no holes in the boat and they were going to, wax the sides of it so it's ready for some race, that's fine. But they have too many gaps to fill to pursue Davante Adams. I think last week, and you can please correct me, the amount of free cap space is only 15. It's in the teens.
That is correct at this point. Yes.
They need to go after the offensive line. They need to go after a backup quarterback. And then, then there's some shoring up and decisions to be made. Here's the problem.
Okay.
The problem with Davante Adams, one of the problems is how much cap space are you willing to devote to one position, right? Because at some point, in the words of Cuban Gooden Jr., right, Garrett Wilson, and we're almost there, he's like going to be, show me the money, right? And
after the season is when he's eligible. That's how it works for these rookie wage scales after 3 years in. You're right. Yep.
Right. So Davante Adams is not coming over for a 1 year, discount deal, right? He's going to be a lot of money. And who do you want? To me, it's a decision. You want Davante Adams or do you want Garrett Wilson, right? And to me, it's Garrett Wilson for the long term. There are other decisions that have to be made at wide receiver. Some of the problem, the Jets are where they at with cap space is they let Aaron Rodgers have the checkbook and I want this, and this. And some of those are chemistry. Obviously, Davante Adams is not a Aaron Rodgers chemistry only person, right? Like Lazard is, like Cobb is, that both were MIA. And so the Jets need to stop Aaron Rodgers from acting like the general manager. He is not, right? You always speak about the last 5 years. He's missed one game due to COVID, blah, 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 blah. You don't look at his full thing. And the fact is he played 4 downs and he is old. And the Jets' offensive line is not good. And it could happen again. And we'd be back where we are. So we need to take the money that we would spend on Davante Adams and spread that peanut butter around. Do we need to draft a wide receiver? Is that a need? Yes. It's not in the top 3 needs, but it is a need, right? We need to cut bait on Lazard, right? There are wide receivers out there. We need a solid 2, right? And a 3. You can get that through the draft. You can get that through free agency. You don't need 2 1s, right? Because you're going to have this shiny sports car you can't get out of the garage because of all the other pieces, all the other holes you have. And I have to go back to the most important part of all this. Aaron Rodgers has to stop running the Jets. It's starting to trickle in, right? It wasn't as prevalent in Green Bay, but think about this. Normally you hear nothing from Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But when he was there, he's got to make noise, right? Despite the fact he likes to go in the dark and talk to himself, he likes to make a lot of noise and he likes to be heard. And it's detrimental to the Jets. It's funny that he says the BS has to stop. He's the source of the BS, right? So that's the problem. He needs to stop being the GM, and you can't keep tailoring this team because if he gets hurt again, he's done. I don't think he's going to play. If he gets hurt in the first 4 games of the season, he's not coming back for a 3rd go round. I don't believe that's true. And so we have to build for life after Aaron Rodgers. This smells a lot to me, and I said it a year ago, like the Brett Favre, like it was cool for a little while, but in the end, it set the Jets back. So those are my thoughts on Davante Adams.
A lot to unpack there. Here's a few things I would just say. The thing that I love about Davante Adams is so he just had a down year by his standards. And his down year by his standards is 103 catches, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns in Jets history those all would have been pretty favorable. The 103 catches is second best in a single season, would be second best in a single season all time. The yardage is kind of whatever. It'd be like a top 20, and then the touchdowns would be inside the like a top 5 in terms of tying from the statistics. Before this season, that was down by Davante Adams standards. For 3 years in a row. That includes one with the Raiders, and the 2 with the Packers. Those were Aaron Rodgers back-to-back MVP seasons. This was the best stretch of Davante Adams' career. His touchdowns were 18, 11, 14. His catches were 115, 123, 100, and his yards were 1,300, 1,500, 1,500. So all of it looks tasty from that perspective of Davante. Again, there's an inevitable drop-off that has to happen with Father Time, that part. But the contract thing that kind of intrigues me with Davante is he's still under contract for 3 more years on this $140 million deal. This upcoming season is actually super manageable. His yearly cash that he's due is hovering around $17 million. The highest paid wide receiver in football is still Tyreek Hill at 30. So you're getting him at a relative discount for the first year, but then the numbers jump up the following 2 seasons in 2025 and 2026. That yearly cash jumps up to $36 million per season, which is aggressive to say the least. But for this upcoming year, it's a little cheaper. So again, if the Jets go to some of these other worlds for wide receiver help, they got 6 draft picks in this class, no second round pick. So they got the first, and then they won't pick again to the third as currently constructed. Trade backs and things can happen from that perspective. But the free agency is where I get a little concerned because I think it's going to be more than 17 mil per year on one of these aggressive guys. Unless, to your point, you go for one of those, maybe not a number 1, but a 2, 3. If you kind of split up your change, maybe you could pursue some of those options. It'll be Boy Green Meets Woody on Tuesday afternoon. We're actually going through the wide receiver market, so I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. But it's interesting, Pop, that you mirror a lot of the things that former NFL GM Randy Mueller said when he joined the show 2 weeks ago about he doesn't believe wide receivers in the same ballpark of needs for the Jets, as it doesn't matter. In your example, I'll kind of combine your analogies of the shiny sports car in the garage. It basically won't matter if you can't, protect the quarterback from that perspective. I would the only part that I really push back on, besides all the things I just said, is I feel like wide receiver is a higher need than people believe. There's Garrett Wilson, but Alan Lazard was trash. Corey Davis surprisingly retires. You have a couple of undrafted free agents on the roster, and Xavier Gibson and Jason Brownlee from last year that were probably elevated in Brownlee barely played, but Xavier played more so. But they were probably elevated in too high of role for what they should be, a little bit lower in the pecking order spot guys. So Lazard, the problem is you're attached to that grenade. You could move on this offseason, but you don't save any cap. There's just this massive dead cap hit that will hurt you. So you're probably stuck to Lazard minimum for another year. And then you have to try to figure out other pieces around him. So you probably need another 2 and probably another 3. So a starter and maybe a backup to Lazard. So 3, 4, we could kind of debate on that. But it seems like they need more pieces because Garrett Wilson was trying to do it all by himself last year, and he put up fine numbers. He was in the running for Pro Bowl consideration, all that other jazz. But it's just, it just seems difficult. They need one of these guys. There's a lot of sexy guys out there, but I'm not even sure how many of these guys are going to reach the open market. So if Davante Adams is off the board, that leaves the Jets in a very interesting position to try to creatively fill these holes for Aaron Rodgers at wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the problem is when we go, so maybe wide receiver is the third need, right?
Sure, to your point, right. Offensive line, backup quarterback, right.
But the problem with the offensive line, that's not although it's a name on the list, it's more than one slot on the
Correct.
list.
Yeah, tackles, guards. Yeah, I agree. That's a fair counter. Yep.
I think the wide receiver solution is not to spend, because again, you have so much money.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, and I hate to even say this out loud, and it's not this person, but it could be a similar person. One of the cheapest person that has shown capacity to deliver, you could go get a Michael Gallup, right? He could come in to the Jets. So you sign someone like him who's going to be cheap. He had an injury year. This year, it wasn't because he couldn't catch the ball. It's because they had so many other options in the year that CeeDee Lamb had. So there's a strong, and then you pick somebody up through the draft. That's how I think you get a medium price range wide receiver, and then you get the next one in through the draft, unless you think you have them on the practice squad, which I'm not that familiar with the depth of the practice squad for the Jets, but I think that's how you handle it. And just think about this.
Okay.
Raiders weren't superstars and on offense, but they did reasonably well. And Davante Adams didn't get right. You talked about his numbers, 1,100 yards. The Raiders were, for most of the year, for most of the games, they were in a better quarterback position than the Jets, right? I mean, everyone was.
Yeah, I was about to say, Aiden O'Connell was so Jimmy Garoppolo started the year. He was kind of hot and cold. They won a couple of games. And then Antonio Pierce takes over for McDaniels. They immediately bench him. You never see him again, although I think he popped in for an injury for a hot second. And then it was Aiden O'Connell, who was kind of mid. He was whatever. There were some good moments, sure, but, a lot of mid.
Yeah, and so my point is Davante Adams, this is what makes me think that he may be starting to tail off.
Okay.
Because Garrett Wilson was in a much worse place when he lined up every week of the season.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And Davante Adams only managed, I don't have the numbers in front of me, I'm going to say it's between 60 and 70 yards more or less.
Yeah, let me compare. Let me put this
Garrett
up
Wilson had over 1,000 yards. Davante Adams had 1,100 yards. And who was in a worse situation?
Okay,
right?
Yeah. So let's compare and contrast. So I have these both up here. I don't have a smooth way of presenting on the screen, but I could just read it. So Davante Adams had 8 more catches than Garrett Wilson. Okay. So Davante Adams 103, Garrett Wilson 95. Garrett Wilson had 1,042 yards. So Davante had 100 more yards, basically, is what he had more. And they dominated him in touchdowns. But Garrett has kind of struggled with quarterbacks getting him the ball in the most important area. Davante had 8. Garrett Wilson had 3. But they are, to your point, they're the difference is somewhat inconsequential, ultimately, when we're talking about a handful here, a handful there.
Right, and that's my point. And right, so who has more potential going forward? Obviously, it's Garrett Wilson.
Of course.
And I wouldn't overspend because it would be a one-year thing. It'd be more like we'd be running it back one more time. The Jets phrase of running it back, which, by the way, is a terrible idea. Obviously you gotta ride, or let's ride. Is that what?
It's a Broncos thing. Broncos country. Yeah. Let's ride.
Yeah. Let's ride. So obviously we're gonna ride with Rodgers, but we have to prepare for the inevitable through either the draft or signing a backup quarterback. Bringing in his favorite wide receiver would not be helpful to the Jets. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I will just reiterate, if you guys have not seen the interview with Randy Mueller, it's a great, about 40, 45-minute conversation. It's fantastic. And I think one of the things he said is I was curious to hear his thoughts, because when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, I imagine, or a quarterback of any of that kind of level, they're involved, they should be, and involved in the conversations as you're constructing the roster, specifically to the offensive side of the ball. So I imagine those guys have a lot to say. And I asked Randy, who used to be in that chair at several different NFL locations, how do you include the quarterback but not do sort of what happened last year? Like, so you brought in Lazard. That ended horribly. You bring in Cobb, and while it wasn't a big financial investment, it was more so reps. He was taking a lot of reps from people, and the analytics on how he performed were not very good. He wasn't creating separation and things of that nature. So how do you listen to the quarterback, but not he's giving you suggestions and guidelines as opposed to demands? How do you kind of weigh that? And Randy said, I will take all the recruiting help, which Aaron Rodgers has offered, as he wants. It can only help to have a 4-time NFL MVP. He called him an asset. However, he said, I'm the GM. I'm the one doing the job. So there's almost a filtration system of, if Aaron Rodgers watches tape on a certain guy and I want his opinion, I'll get it. But it's not like, Aaron Rodgers, who do you think we should sign this offseason? All right, let's go. Let's go sign him. So there is this kind of a fine line here of figuring out what it's going to be. So interesting. Again, I don't think it's dead, but it's less likely. And it was less likely probably from the get-go. Again, the Jets only have 6 picks in this draft, and that's missing a second rounder. And a 10th overall pick sounds too expensive for a 31-year-old receiver. Then what are you giving the Raiders? A bunch of chump change, a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th? And why the hell would they do that? So we have to still figure out what's going to happen there. But before we end, Father, let's talk about some of the NFL games today. We got a pair of them today. We'll talk about the other 2 for tomorrow's festivities. And then we got a lot of crap here in the comments, Dad. I'm just going to be honest. I'm just going to be very blunt. Although you did get credit, I don't know if I'll find the comment fast enough, for showing up today. Some person said as a Dallas Cowboys fan, did not think you were even going to show up to the show today, is what one of these people said. So what about, you said running it back is kind of funny with the Cowboys. What about the Dallas Cowboys running it back? What's happening there? Mike McCarthy back and everything. Give us some thoughts.
Yeah, and so I'll be very clear.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to say, if you're going to throw out what I'm going to say and not listen to it, then you're just, you're a heckler with no. The Cowboys have one of the top 5 offensive lines in the league when healthy. The Cowboys have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. The Cowboys have a top 3 wide receiver, and their defense is right up there. Take Micah Parsons, take their cornerbacks. Everybody forgets that we had a multiple-time Pro Bowler at quarterback that never took a snap, and then we still led the NFL in interceptions. So I tell you all that we have one of the most talented teams in the NFL. And the fact is, the reason that we lost every single game this year was coaching, right?
Okay.
Dan Quinn, God bless him. Thanks for coming. Don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. Here's the fact. They lost to Green Bay. They lost to Miami. They lost to the Cardinals. All of those were Dan Quinn's fault.
San Francisco too. Yeah.
Yeah, San Francisco. They were all his fault, right? With that amount of talent, right? You have Micah Parsons, Diggs, Bland. The list goes on and on. DeMarcus Lawrence. Are you kidding me? These are all top NFL players in the league. And the fact is, he didn't get it done. Same thing on the offense, right? Should Mike McCarthy be back? No. Is it as big a crime to run it back with the Cowboys as it is for the Jets? No. The Jets should clean sweep now. The amount of quality head coaching candidates that are available this year may never happen again in the history of the NFL. May never happen again.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So do I wish that Mike McCarthy was gone? I blame it more on Quinn than I do McCarthy. It took him a long time to figure it out, and he has a lot of gaps. So I prefer that they had moved on. There's several of the coaches out there that I think could do better. Dan Quinn, God bless him. Every time he played against one of his assistants from the Atlanta Falcons, he is winless from the people that brought along. Go and look at the stats. Every time he's played one of the people that he was the head coach, they were the assistants, I don't think he's won a game.
I think the only one he's won, if I'll have to double check the dates, Jeff Ulbrich, the Jets defensive coordinator, I think he was with old Dan Quinn there in Atlanta for a couple of years. So I have to double check if they both crossed over. I think they did. Let me get that one in, because unfortunately,
in the end, right. You cannot argue that they've won 12 games 3 years in a row. And just for the fact, they had the second largest points differential in the NFL, which is really where you write the check, right?
Yeah.
The only team that had a larger point differential for every game was the Ravens, and they did it via the Cowboys. They beat the Cowboys by 1 point. The Cowboys beat their opponents by point differential of over 190 points.
Wow.
So
yeah, that one was true. So Jeff Ulbrich was with Dan Quinn the entire time in Atlanta. So you guys did beat the Jets. So check that one off the bucket list. They're together for for his full time there in Atlanta from 2015 through 2020. So there you go. Nice.
Yeah, we actually, there's no trophy rack in 2023 for beating the Jets.
Hey, I just want to make this clear, because I think this is an important note for, the Cowboys fan talking here high and mighty. The Jets have been to more AFC, well, let's just put it this way, have been to more conference championship games since 95 than the Cowboys. They've been to zip and pip. The Jets went to 3, 1998, 2009, 2010. I mean,
I wish you hadn't gone here, because the Jets are in the bottom 6 teams in the league for number of playoff appearances in the history of the franchise. The bottom 10% or more in the league. 25 playoff appearances in how many ever years?
Quality over quantity.
We're the Cowboys. Oh, they're number 1 with playoff appearances. So, and playoff games played. Playoff games played. Let me be more clear. Playoff games played. Jets 25,
Yeah.
Today's fun fact. Cowboys 67. So it's pretty
Again,
close.
quality over quantity. Okay, pal? And then 3 conference championship games. 3 times the Jets were within a game of the Super Bowl. The Cowboys haven't done that this century. Literally. I mean, come on, man.
3 times you almost did something. That's congratulations.
Well, for Pete's sake, that's why I don't think Mike McCarthy should be back. How do you tell your team, hey, we're gonna run it back? I know, but they are bringing it back. That's what I'm saying. I know you may not agree with it. That's just what I'm saying, like openly. That like,
what would Bill Belichick do with that talent on defense?
That's what I'm saying. That's why I think it could only help. I don't know. That you just mentioned the unbelievable talent in head coaching world, which I agree with. Belichick, Harbaugh. Even think about it, like the Raiders. I'm gonna, Raiders, good for you, but I'd be somewhat underwhelmed. Wow, we brought back Antonio Pierce. Boy, hope that wasn't a spark of lightning that lasted a handful of games. So they were like over 5. He was like 5-4, yippity doodah, and they chose him over Harbaugh, Belichick, and some of these other guys. Oh boy, I don't know, but that's my point. There's that much talent out there. So,
but the Raiders are not well known for making good decisions.
That's also true, I suppose. But
yeah, I mean, you go back to You could say what you want about Derek Carr, but he's the all-time leader in every stat for quarterbacks in Raider history. And they said, you know what? Even though you're the best we've ever had, we don't really need you.
That's also fair. I also want to say this. Someone I'd love to see coach the Cowboys today, Jimmy Johnson. I don't know if people saw him in the halftime of the Cowboys-Packers game. Kurt Menefee turns over to Jimmy. What would you tell this team if you were in the locker room right now? And he got the one-on-one camera, and he was fired up, and he was talking about how, effort and all these things, and put it out there and do it. And I was like, whoa, okay, Jimmy Johnson still has it. So he was pretty fired up. And, like Michael Strahan tried to make a joke, like he was so fired up that he wanted to get down in his 3-point stance and line up for him. But I think Jimmy Johnson, like he ended up started laughing, but I think he was just so dead serious about his missive to the Cowboys. So he's somebody, okay, Jimmy Johnson still got it. I'd love to see it. So we'll see. I don't know. We were joking about it this week on the radio show. There was the slumber party for McCarthy to get him over for the Jerry Jones thing. I hope it works. Again, the wins have been great. 12 wins in each of the last 3 years. But here's this one, Dad. Tell me if you believe this. You buy or sell this, okay? Old Mike McCarthy there is entering his 5th season with the Dallas Cowboys. In his 5th season with the Green Bay Packers, they won the whole thing with the Super Bowl. And then he was asked, I heard him in his presser, he was asked, hey, is that the trajectory? He went, yes, thanks for yes, that is exactly the trajectory. I'm playing for the Cowboys, yes, to win the Super Bowl. Thanks, Josh, or whatever the guy's name was in the crowd. So, you believing? You drinking the Kool-Aid on that? 5th year? All lining up?
Yeah, I think this year is lined up. It's interesting. Jets, the Cowboys have the problems the Jets do, that you have a bunch of people that you have to address what you're going to do with them, right? They want, and arguably so, right? It doesn't matter if you're the best quarterback or the best at any position in the NFL. You're the best that's on the market right now. And so that's how these people, okay, well, this person's the highest paid quarterback for 5 seconds. This person's not, just because they come up to bat, right? So Dak is going to want to be the highest paid quarterback, and by his regular, and I don't blame this loss. Right. I will say this for Mike McCarthy. Last year, the scheme that the moron, Kellen Moore, had for Dak put him in situations where he had to, the whole concept of the team, put Dak in situations he had to take risks. Right. This year, they had the right scheme and he produced. So Dak's going to want to be the highest paid quarterback. Micah Parsons is going to want to be the highest paid defender. And CeeDee Lamb's going to be the highest paid receiver. Those are real world problems, and you really can't argue with any of them on wanting to be the highest paid at their position. But it goes back to, you can't pay everybody, so you have to figure out who you're going to pay. So it's hard. But I do believe that they get a sound defensive coordinator in there that's not in love with his own scheme to his own detriment, right? So we known for a couple years that Dan Quinn, he needed some more beef. He needed to come up with some more schemes. He got creative against Green Bay, which makes no sense. He went to this zone when all year man won, and then he was unable to adapt. That's why I'm beyond over, right? His inability to stop the run, that's Dan Quinn. It's not the players, it's the scheme. And when they decided against Green Bay to go zone as opposed to man, that's why they lost the game. That's why they got behind.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. He's, taken 5, 6, 7 head coaching interviews, so maybe it'll work out perfectly where he just walks out the door from a public relations standpoint of like it looks better. He goes out and he's a head coach for somebody else. Okay, well, I'll see you. Who knows what would have happened here? Instead of having to potentially fire apart mutually after all the hype and hubbub that he got. But by the way, if you Cowboys have too many problems paying your guys, we would take CD Lamb. We would do that for you. Just want to throw that out there. Absolutely. We'll do you a solid. Yeah.
You can have Gallup. That's who you can.
Yeah, I heard you offer that. It's like, hey, that Corvette on the front lot looks pretty nice. Yeah, we got the sedan back here, if that interests you. No, the Corvette is what I prefer. Thank you. So, just want to say I'm all for it. I'm on board. If, help me help you, trying to help you out. Any interest?
Yeah, no. Yeah, just to Jared, who made a comment, right? He adapted he made an error, and then during the game, he didn't shift back over, right? So he can, yes, there's a game plan for every game, right? And his game plan was to play more zone. It wasn't working. He should have shifted out of it. But year in, year out, in the past 3 years, while they have had more turnovers, they haven't had more success because any team, and I don't know why more teams don't do it, decide to come punch the Cowboys in the mouth, it ends up badly. Right. And you can list the game over the past few years where they punched him in the mouth, the Arizona game, the Buffalo game, the 49ers game. And you go back and look at the stats, and none of those teams, right? I think Josh Allen passed for like 90 yards against the Cowboys, right? And even, the numbers, even for the running backs, I think McCaffrey didn't rush for over 100 yards against the Cowboys. It was just the fact they just couldn't stop them. They just got punched him in the mouth. And the Cowboys were incapable. Their scheme was incapable of stopping the run. And that's why Quinn just needs to go.
Fair enough. All right. Well, let's end on this, Pop. We'll end on the, again, we'll talk about the Saturday games. We'll save the Sunday games for tomorrow. But we got the 2 Saturday games today, 4:30. That'll be on ESPN, ABC, ESPN+. That is Houston Texans traveling to Baltimore, the 1 seed versus the 4 seed. Houston winning the AFC South and, of course, winning the game over this past weekend against the Cleveland Browns in emphatic fashion. Baltimore had the bye. Baltimore, a 9.5-point favorite at home. Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, so I would tell you that if you are in a relationship where there's give and take, and what I mean is you get a lot of crap and you do what your significant other says. Today is the day to take her shopping. Today is the day to take the kids to the playground because these games will not be good.
Oh,
will not be good.
Okay.
Tomorrow games, that's where the money hits the road. Those are the ones. Put your stock in today so you can stay home tomorrow. So the Ravens win. CJ Stroud, great story. They're going to get their ass kicked. They're going to more than cover the spread. It's going to be 15, 20 points.
Wow, that would be, again, these two teams played back in week 1. Both teams, certainly not the teams that they were back then. But, man, I'm curious because that's a good point. CJ Stroud is a rookie. He played at home in front of all his fans, playing on the road for his first playoff game in that hostile territory in Baltimore against the number 1 seed. Ton of pressure on Baltimore, though. Lamar has not delivered in the playoffs during his young career to date, and now they have a clear path. 1 seed, AFC, you win this game, you're hosting the AFC Championship game. A lot of pressure on Baltimore. They got to deliver. No, must win. No doubt about it. I mean, both teams want to win, but boy, Lamar needs this one, especially in a year that's probably the MVP season. All right, let's go to Saturday Night Football, although you don't think this one's going to be very competitive either. Green Bay on the road, San Francisco. Green Bay, of course, the 7 seed. They're the first 7 seed to ever win a playoff game. They automatically had to play San Francisco, the 1 seed. 49ers, a 9.5-point favorite in this one again. We all know 49ers got the bye last week, and, the Packers did whatever they did in that Cowboys game. So,
yeah. So there's an outside chance this could be a game, right? San Francisco has shown they had a 3-game stretch in the middle of the year where they were terrible. It's hard to say last week. I mean, the last time they played, what it was worth. But I do think that San Francisco will not, right? They don't have problems stopping the run. And I don't see Green Bay. It's a great story, and the story is over. I do think they lose by 10 points. It's a better game than the Baltimore game for sure.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think it's close. But the Green Bay played well above their heads last week. San Francisco is capable of playing below their talent level. But I still think that talent wins out, coaching wins out, and it'll be the 49ers.
Just to confirm, everyone's asking, yes, that is Paul's pops. That is my father. That's why his name is Paul Eston, and my name is also Paul Eston. That is the science behind that one. I would say I think the key is, and it's not like this is like breaking news here, it seems like the key to beating San Francisco is getting on top of them very quickly. And it seems like there will be a chance because Green Bay, when they took, the coin toss happened, they said, no, we want the ball against Dallas. It chewed up like 7:52 off the clock on the opening drive and immediately established their presence. San Francisco, when they win the toss, they are a defer kind of team. And old Kyle Shanahan said that regardless of the Jordan Love experience that happened against Dallas or other situations during the year, they will defer if they win the toss, and Green Bay might win it and go after them. I just think if you could get on top of San Francisco, they've proven in the past that they can't, when they're operating in that way where they got they got pressure on them and they're down, they got to do some stuff that they don't like doing. Oh, my dad's a young looking. There you go. Old Sluggo there giving you some love. Dad's looking young looking. There you are. Well, a tip of the cap. Shout out to the gods. Hopefully I can have those same genes in 1,000 years. Hopefully I'm still looking as handsome as I do now. But, I digress. Going back there, I think it is the key of getting on top of them. Are the Packers capable of doing that? We will see. I mean, the reason why I have a lot more confidence in Green Bay than Houston, again, Houston's going on the road for the first time in the playoffs with C.J. Stroud. Friggin' Jordan Love just went into Dallas. They had won 16 games in a row at home and by killing people. So if he went in there with some sort of moxie, I mean, shoot, going into San Francisco, that should just be, past the biscuits here of something else from that. And we'll see if they can get on top of it. If they get on top of them, all of a sudden I think this game gets super interesting. But if San Fran gets their normal, you can't weather that storm early, I think this could get out of hand. That it could get out of hand.
Yeah, it's going to get out of hand. And I'll tell you that the San Francisco defense is not going to have the secondary breakdowns, embarrassing breakdowns that happened 2 or 3 times in the Cowboys game where, there's 100 fans closer to the tight end than any Cowboys player. And so those breakdowns will not happen in the 49ers. Those are free points, and I don't see it happening.
Okay, we don't need to break down the full games, but just because we won't have you on the show tomorrow, just your quick picks. You said the 2 games tomorrow; those will be at 3 and 6:30 respectively. Those Bucks, Lions, Chiefs, Bills. Winners, of course, advance to the conference championship games in the AFC and NFC respectively. What are your quick picks for that one? Because we won't have you on the show tomorrow.
Yeah, and I would say I like the Lions in the first game.
Okay,
I think Tampa Bay. I think it's out there, but I like the Lions, and really. I would take Buffalo, but it really depends which, the most bipolar team that I've seen this year in the NFL of any quality is the Kansas City Chiefs. Mm-hmm. And it's really, it's clear that Patrick Mahomes, if you do the Cam Newton Superman thing, he's a little kryptonite without some of his receivers. And if Kelsey has got too much of whatever her name is. I don't even know what her name is. If he's got too much of her on the brain, he's not focused on playing football. He's really showed it. Really showed his ass a few times this year in games, not looking like he was not giving a full effort.
Yeah. Well, and the thing with that one will be Patrick Mahomes has never played in a road playoff game. What a lucky – I don't want to say lucky. The Chiefs have won these games like a 4-leaf clover up the took us there, but he's never played in a road playoff game in his career. The only quote-unquote road playoff games is neutral Super Bowls because he has a handful of those in his back pocket. So that's crazy. Before we get you out of here, Pop, Shadow Realm asks, because I don't think they know about your background, about how many Narnia heads could Paul Sr.'s roundhouse kicks go through. Now, this is a slight inside Jets joke, but in general, Father, how far did you get? What is it, second or third degree Taekwondo? Is that where you got, Pop?
That's true. So quite a few.
Quite a few.
Quite a few roundhouse kicks delivered and a couple received.
All right, beautiful.
A few given to Boy Green here.
I don't think they got that high, Pop, but I respect it. It's like the fish story. Oh boy, when I was out on that water, I caught one about this big, and then the next day, whoa, actually, it was this big. Easy there, Pop. All right.
All right. All I know is I would kick you, you would fall down and have to get up.
Well, yeah, I'd allow you to have one shot, but if you didn't deliver on that one, this one is over.
That's good.
All right.
Your mother should not have dropped you on your head when you were little.
Okay. Well, Dad, we're both on the couches watching these playoff games. Unfortunately, I wish our teams were still in it, but I'm looking forward to these every Saturday conversations. Next week will be conference championship weekend, and some tickets will be punched to the Super Bowl. It should be a lot of fun. Should be a doozy. Thanks for popping on.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, everybody. We will see you tomorrow. Ty Butler will preview those two other divisional games to round out the weekend. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take care.